All right, so today we are going like deep diving into something I think is pretty fascinating.
Oh, yeah.
The customs and just like the etiquette surrounding food,
Right.
specifically in Islamic culture. And we've got this great guide from SimianKids.com.
Wonderful.
And I have a feeling that
Yeah.
you are going to be surprised by at least some of these details.
It is amazing how food, such a basic human need
Yeah.
can be approached with so much intention
Right.
and meaning in different cultures. And these customs often go, beyond just like simple rules.
Right?
They offer a glimpse into like a culture's values and beliefs.
Exactly. And that's kind of what makes this deep dive so interesting.
Yeah.
Like, we're not just going to be like, okay, here's a list of do's and don'ts.
Right.
It's like, we're going to uncover like the why
Exactly.
behind these practices and explore how they connect to these like broader themes like gratitude, respect, mindfulness.
Absolutely. And speaking of respect,
Yeah.
let's start with a fascinating example of how these teachings were integrated into everyday life, even for children.
Okay.
There's this beautiful hadith narrated by Umar bin Abu Salama,
Yeah.
and he was just a young boy under the Prophet Muhammad's care.
Yeah.
And like many kids, his hand would wander all over the dish during meals.
Oh, I can definitely relate to that.
Right. It's like a buffet of options all right there in front of you.
Yeah.
And the Prophet, in his wisdom and gentle way, instructed him. He said, "O young boy, say the name of Allah and eat with your right hand and eat from what is nearest to you."
Wow.
Just 3 simple instructions.
Yeah.
Yet they lay the foundation for such a mindful and respectful approach to eating.
It really highlights how like the Prophet's teachings were so accessible
Yeah.
and practical.
Absolutely.
Like he wasn't laying down a bunch of rigid rules, but rather guiding people towards a better way of living.
Exactly. And those 3 instructions saying Bismillah, eating with the right hand, and taking food from what's nearest, they become this anchor for a whole system of Islamic table manners.
Okay, so let's kind of unpack these a bit.
Yeah.
Eating with the right hand. I've heard of this in other cultures too.
Mm-hmm.
What's the significance behind that?
Well, it's a fascinating practice that you find across various traditions.
Yeah.
In many cultures, the right hand is associated with purity,
Okay.
and it's used for actions that are considered honorable or respectful.
Right.
Using the left hand for eating, especially in communal settings, might be seen as disrespectful or unclean.
Interesting.
So this distinction adds a layer of intentionality to the act of eating, reminding us to approach it with a sense of reverence.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It's not just about which hand you use,
Right.
but the symbolic meaning behind it.
Exactly.
And before we move on from those initial instructions from the Prophet, you mentioned saying Bismillah.
Yes. Bismillah, meaning in the name of God, is said before many actions in Islam,
Okay.
including eating.
Right.
It's a way of acknowledging that all sustenance comes from God and expressing gratitude for the blessings we receive.
So starting the meal with this phrase, it sets the tone for a mindful and grateful experience.
Precisely, it shifts our focus from simply consuming food
Yeah.
to recognizing the gift of nourishment and the divine source from which it originates.
Now, the guide also delves into this concept of halal, which means permissible.
Mm-hmm.
It even references a verse from the Quran, Surah An-Nahl 114,
Yes.
which emphasizes consuming lawful and good provisions as an act of gratitude towards Allah.
This concept of tayyib
Okay.
is very central to Islamic dietary practices.
Gotcha.
Tayyib goes beyond just being permissible. It encompasses the quality, the purity, the ethical sourcing of food.
So it's not just about avoiding certain ingredients, it's
Mhm.
also considering the entire process by which the food reaches our plate.
Exactly. It encourages Muslims to be mindful of where their food comes from, how it's treated,
Right.
and the impact its production has on the environment and other beings.
That's a pretty holistic approach to food.
It is.
Considering not just our own needs, but also these ethical dimensions of food production. And I think a lot of people, regardless of their religious beliefs, are becoming more attuned to those aspects nowadays.
Absolutely. There's a growing awareness of the interconnectedness of our choices.
Right.
And food is no exception.
The guide also mentions how these principles are integrated into modern life through things like halal signs on food packaging.
Yes, these symbols help Muslims navigate the complexities of the modern food industry and make informed choices that align with their beliefs.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that these principles aren't confined to religious texts. They're actively practiced and integrated into daily life.
Okay, so we've explored these foundational principles of halal tayyib
Yes.
and those initial instructions from the Prophet about mindful eating. I'm curious to kind of dive into the specific manners that guide Muslims before, during, and after a meal.
Let's delve into that.
Okay.
These specific manners really showcase the depth and richness of Islamic etiquette surrounding food.
Okay, so the guide outlines quite a few, but what are some that really jump out at you?
Well, the emphasis on washing hands before and after eating is particularly interesting.
Yeah,
Many cultures practice hand washing before meals,
right.
but the emphasis on washing afterward as well shows a deeper commitment to cleanliness and hygiene.
I see what you mean. It also emphasizes the importance of completing the ritual of eating
Yes.
with a sense of closure and purity.
Absolutely.
It's like saying, thank you for this nourishment, and now I'm cleansing myself to move on to the next part of my day.
That's a beautiful way to look at it. It elevates a simple act of hygiene into a mindful practice of transition and gratitude.
Now, another one that caught my eye, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this, is the prohibition of blowing on hot food.
Ah, yes.
Hmm.
This one often sparks curiosity.
Yeah.
There are potentially several reasons behind this practice.
Okay.
In some cultures, it might be seen as disrespectful to the food or the person who prepared it. You're essentially showing impatience and a lack of appreciation for the effort that went into the meal.
It's almost like saying, this isn't cooling down fast enough for me.
Exactly. It's about cultivating patience and appreciation for the process.
Right.
And from a hygiene perspective, blowing on food could spread droplets, especially in communal settings.
Yeah, that makes sense. It ties back to that emphasis on cleanliness and respect for others.
Precisely. It's these subtle connections between seemingly small actions and larger values that make these customs so fascinating.
Okay, let's explore some more of those subtle connections after a quick break.
Sounds good.
Okay, so we were just talking about those fascinating reasons for not blowing on hot food.
Right.
What other kind of unique manners stand out to you?
Well, this next one might seem small,
Okay.
but I think it really speaks volumes about the emphasis on gratitude and respect in Islamic etiquette.
Okay.
The guide mentions that criticizing food is frowned upon.
Oh,
It's seen as a sign of disrespect for the person who prepared the meal,
right.
and a lack of appreciation for the blessings you've been given.
That's a really interesting point.
Yeah.
I think lots of cultures have those customs around not speaking ill of the food.
Yes, it's about recognizing the effort and generosity involved in preparing a meal.
Right.
Even if it's not exactly to your taste, it encourages humility and gratitude.
It's a reminder that food is not just fuel.
Mm,
It's like an act of sharing and caring.
exactly. And this focus on mindful appreciation extends to the quantity of food we consume as well.
You mean the part about only eating until you're satisfied?
Precisely, this practice goes beyond simply avoiding overeating.
Okay.
It encourages us to listen to our bodies, to
Right.
be present in the moment, and to savor each bite.
This kind of resonates with a lot of modern ideas about mindful eating, doesn't it?
Absolutely. This concept was embedded in Islamic teachings centuries ago.
Wow.
It's about recognizing that food is a gift
Right.
and treating it with respect
Right.
rather than just mindlessly consuming it.
It makes you wonder how many of these ancient practices might actually hold valuable lessons for how we approach food today.
Indeed, these customs offer a framework for a more intentional and harmonious relationship with food.
Now, we've been focusing a lot on the individual aspects of these manners,
Yeah,
but there's also this strong social dimension, isn't there?
absolutely. The act of sharing a meal is a powerful way to build community and strengthen bonds.
Yeah, thinking back to that hadith with the young boy learning from the prophet.
Mm-hmm.
Even the simple act of eating from what's nearest to you
Right.
has a social implication.
Yes, it encourages consideration for others at the table.
Right.
You're not reaching across, potentially inconveniencing someone
Mhm.
or taking more than your fair share.
Yeah.
It fosters this sense of harmony and shared experience.
It's amazing how these seemingly small actions can ripple outwards, influencing not just like our personal well-being, but also our relationships with others.
And it's not just about how we act during the meal. The guide also highlights manners for before and after eating.
Oh, right, like washing hands, which we talked about earlier.
Exactly.
What are some other
Well,
examples?
before the meal, it's customary to wait for the host or the eldest person at the table to begin eating first.
That's a sign of respect, right?
Absolutely.
Acknowledging their position and expressing gratitude for their hospitality.
Exactly. It's a way of honoring the hierarchy
Okay.
and fostering a sense of unity among those gathered for the meal.
Right.
And after the meal, there's an emphasis on thanking the host
Uh-huh.
and expressing appreciation for the food.
These are all pretty universal gestures of courtesy, aren't they?
Hey, they are.
It reinforces the idea that a lot of these Islamic manners resonate with values found across cultures.
Absolutely. At their core, These customs promote kindness, consideration, and respect values that are universally appreciated and contribute to a more harmonious social fabric.
I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier about the potential for these ancient practices to inform our modern approach to food.
hmm
What specifically do you think we can learn from them?
Well, in today's fast-paced world,
Right.
we often eat on the go, barely paying attention to what we're consuming.
Yeah.
We scroll through our phones, we watch TV, we multitask during meal times.
Yeah.
Islamic manners, on the other hand,
Right.
encourage us to slow down,
hmm
to be present in the moment, and to treat the act of eating with intention and gratitude.
It's like a form of mindfulness practice, right?
Precisely.
Bringing our full attention to the sensory experience of eating
Yes.
and appreciating the nourishment we receive.
Imagine the impact it could have on our well-being if we incorporated even just a few of these practices into our daily lives.
Yeah.
Starting a meal with a moment of gratitude, eating with our right hand, mindfully savoring each bite, and ending with an expression of thanks.
Yeah.
These small acts can transform a mundane routine into a ritual of appreciation and nourishment.
It's about shifting our mindset from viewing food as simply fuel to recognizing it as this gift that sustains us both physically and spiritually.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that every meal is an opportunity to connect with ourselves,
Right.
with others, and with the source of all blessings.
This conversation has really opened my eyes to the richness and depth of Islamic food customs. I'm starting to see how these practices woven into the fabric of daily life contribute to a more mindful, respectful, and harmonious way of being.
It's been a pleasure exploring these fascinating customs with you.
All right, so we've uncovered a lot of really fascinating insights.
Yeah.
I'm curious, what final thought do you think we should leave our listener with?
I think we should encourage them to consider how incorporating some of these practices, regardless of their background, might enhance their own relationship with food.
I think that's a really great idea after this deep dive.
Yeah.
I think they're probably feeling inspired
Hopefully.
to try incorporating some of these practices into their
Yeah.
own life.
Even just something as simple as pausing for a moment of gratitude before a meal can have a profound impact on how we approach food.
Right. It's about shifting our perspective.
hmm
Moving away from like
Yeah.
that rushed, mindless way of eating that's so common these days.
Exactly. These Islamic manners offer a really great framework for approaching food with intention, with respect, and a sense of connection.
What I find so cool is how these customs extend beyond the individual.
Right.
You know, they influence our interactions with others.
Yeah.
They foster a sense of community and shared experience.
From waiting for the eldest to begin eating to expressing gratitude to the host, these practices weave together individual mindfulness with social harmony.
It's like this beautiful reminder that even something as like simple as eating can be this opportunity to cultivate deeper connections with ourselves, with those around us, with something greater than ourselves.
Absolutely. And you don't have to be Muslim to appreciate and benefit from these practices. They
Yeah.
offer universal values and insights that can enrich anyone's relationship with food.
So to our listener, we encourage you to explore these ideas further.
Yeah.
Maybe try starting your next meal with Bismillah or
Mhm.
focusing on eating with your right hand mindfully.
Yeah, see how these small shifts in awareness can transform your experience of eating.
Who knows, you might just discover this whole new level of appreciation for the simple yet profound act of nourishing yourself.
It's been really fascinating exploring this aspect of Islamic culture with you.
And hopefully it's inspired our listener to approach their own meals with like this renewed sense of intention and gratitude.
I hope so.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time.